Eyewitness News with George Sells, Kathy Adams, Chuck Gatica, Fred McLeod, and the Eyewitness News team.
Good evening. Here's what's happening. At first, everybody thought it was a joke. Somebody setting off firecrackers in the post office at Edmond, Oklahoma, outside Oklahoma City. But soon it became clear that it wasn't a joke at all. It was a massacre. Shattered relatives were discovering that someone in the post office had killed 14 people inside, then taken his own life. That somebody was 44-year-old Pat Sherrill. He shot everybody in sight.
Patrick Henry Sherrill was born on November 13, 1941 in Watonga, Oklahoma, to Charles Benning Sherrill and Anna B. Waynes. His father was 53 years old at the time of his birth, and his mother was 33. He had at least one older brother, Charles Lee Sherrill. Sherrill's early childhood is largely undocumented, but most available accounts suggest that he was a relatively quiet and unremarkable child. Former classmates and coaches described him as shy, introverted, and serious. Nancy English, a peer from Harding High School, described him as a very big guy, kind of quiet and almost shy. Coaches saw him as determined and earnest, and there were no obvious signs of psychological instability or violent behavior during these formative years. Despite his parents' age, they tried to give him the best life he could possibly have. Pat graduated from Harding High School in 1959 and began attending the University of Oklahoma on a wrestling scholarship. However, his time there was short-lived. He dropped out later that same year. In 1964, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, where he initially qualified as an expert of the M14 rifle. After failing to qualify proficiency in handling the rifle, he was demoted to the rank of a marksman. Contrary to persistent rumors, Sherrill did not serve in Vietnam. His service was based at stateside at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. He was discharged under honorable conditions in December 1966, having received no medals or significant commendations. Following his military service, Sherrill enrolled at Edmond Central State University through the GI Bill. In mid-1967, he struggled academically, frequently changing majors and earning mostly D's and F's before dropping out in 1970 without completing a degree. Sherrill's adult life was marked by long periods of unemployment, social isolation, and increasing eccentricity. He lived with his mother in Oklahoma City, relying heavily on her for financial and emotional support from 1974 to 1975. He worked briefly as an electronics technician in maintaining traffic lights. A former supervisor from that job later would describe him as eccentric and kind of strange. One of Sherrill's new endearing interests was amateur radio. Through that hobby, he connected with a member of the Oklahoma Air National Guard and ultimately joined the unit in 1976. He became a member of the marksmanship team and had access to firearms, an interest that grew throughout his life. He was known to attend gun shows and other such conventions. He was an active member of the NRA, or known as the National Rifle Association. These connections would later play a role in the tools he used during the massacre. Around this time, his behavior began drawing concern from others. A civilian employee at the guard base said that she was deeply uncomfortable being alone in the same room with him. She later told reporters that his body language and demeanor gave her the impression that he might be a voyeur or a predator, although she had no direct evidence to support these fears. He later worked at Tinker Air Force Base as a janitor, but his employment there was also short-lived. In 1977, his mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and unfortunately, she passed away the following year. After her death, Sherrill remained living alone in her house, further retreating from social contact. He briefly worked at a local radio shop, but quit abruptly after a coworker referred to him as that young man. Enraged, he yelled, "I have a given name, and it's Patrick Sherrill," before storming out. Neighbors began reporting increasingly erratic behavior. Sherrill was frequently seen walking alone at night and caught peeping into people's windows. Fucking weirdo. Though police were often called, he was never arrested due to lack of physical evidence or violence. Children in the neighborhood began calling him Crazy Pat, a nickname that stuck, and they would often taunt him whenever they would see him around. In 1982, Sherrill was hired by the Edmond branch of the U.S. Postal Service, but resigned just after 89 days. In April 1985, he reapplied and was rehired as a relief carrier, a temporary role that required filling in for other postal workers on various routes. Because of this, he never had a fixed routine or strong social ties at work, While his initial job performance was satisfactory, he remained an outcast. Most coworkers found him difficult to talk to and generally avoided him. His troubles at the post office began escalating in the fall of 1985. In October, Supervisor Bill Bland issued a written reprimand after Sherrill left several trays and parcels at a residence overnight. In March 1986, he was suspended for 14 days following a secondary disciplinary incident involving the misuse of dog repellent on a non-aggressive animal locked behind the gate. These incidents contributed to the growing perception that Sherrill was not only unreliable but potentially mentally unstable. Sherrill became convinced that his supervisors were targeting him for termination. He confided in one of his fellow acquaintances that management is deliberately compiling minor infractions to justify his firing, yet unlike his past employment history, where he would often abruptly quit after conflicts, this time he stayed, likely to the job security and the benefits associated with a government position. Then on August 19, 1986, he was called into a meeting with two supervisors, Bill Bland and Richard Esser, to address further complaints about his performance. Including frequent misdeliveries and poor attendance, the meeting became tense and multiple witnesses were called hearing an argument. What no one could have predicted was how Sherrill would respond to this. On August 20th, 1986, a quiet morning at the Edmond Post Office in Oklahoma turned into a scene of terror, one that would forever change the lives of those involved. That morning, 44-year-old Patrick Sherrill, a postal worker who had been employed at the post office for over a decade, arrived for his shift in his uniform, carrying his mailbag. But no one knew that this would be the day Sherrill would embark on a rampage that would claim 14 lives and leave many others with lifelong scars. Sherrill was armed with two M19 11.45 caliber semi-automatic pistols and a Ruger Mark II 22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. More than 50 employees were busy working that morning, unaware of this danger lurking in their midst. Sherrill quietly walked into the building and approached his supervisors, Richard Esser and Mike Rockney, who were having a conversation. Without a word, Sherrill drew his pistols from his mailbag and opened fire, shooting both of the men fatally. Mike Bigler, a fellow employee, was nearby and recalled hearing popping sounds, which he initially mistook for firecrackers or a practical joke. However, when he looked over, he saw Rockney fall to the floor in a pool of blood and brain matter. Quickly, Bigler realized what was happening and fled, but was shot in the back in an act of desperation. Bigler played dead, hoping the shooter would move on. Sherrill, however, didn't stop. He moved through the building, methodically shooting at anyone in his path. Some employees like Bigler fled the building, but many others were caught off guard. Some initially believed that the sounds were from a dropped mail tray or a practical prank. But as the shooting continued, panic set in. Larry Parrish, another employee, believed it was a drill to prepare for a potential holdup. But when he saw people running and heard gunshots, he knew it was something far more worse. Sherrill's attack was swift and relentless. He moved through the building, shooting employees in random locations. At one point, he followed a group of employees who had fled the building and opened fire in the parking lot, killing Jerry Pyle, who was attempting to escape. Sherrill then re-entered the building to continue his rampage. Hubert Hammond, who had hidden behind mailboxes, recalled seeing Sherrill shoot fellow employee William Nemo before turning his gun toward him. Fortunately, Hammond was able to escape. Gene Black, another employee, ran to the building trying to evade the gunfire. He eventually made it to the front lobby where he saw other wounded employees being helped out. While in the lobby, he saw the body of his boss, Richard Esser, and Mike Rockney. Sherrill continued to move through the post office, killing employees with cold precision. He encountered 5 women hiding in a different section of the building. Praying they wouldn't be discovered, unfortunately Sherrill found them and shot each of them dead. Peggy Gibson, who had narrowly avoided being shot, recalled seeing Sherrill pass by her workstation, heading towards the women. As the chaos unfolded inside, some employees tried to help the wounded, like Jean Bray, who had been shot and collapsed on the lawn outside. Others, like Richard Tompkins, attempted to escape but were unable to find help. A motorcycle rider eventually gave Tompkins a ride to the police station. Sherrill's final moments were marked by a chilling encounter with William Miller, who had been passing out homemade cookies that morning. Sherrill shot Miller without a second thought before heading towards the break room, where he would kill his final victim, Leroy Phillips. Outside, the police arrived and quickly realized that the shooter was inside the building. Around 8:30 a.m., a SWAT team finally arrived and entered the building. As they were walking to the building, they heard one single gunshot. After no more shots were heard and the coast was clear, they entered the building and searched through it. As they searched through the entire building, they made it to the break room where they would find the body of Sherrill. He had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police had received frantic calls from employees and witnesses who had managed to escape, describing Sherrill as the shooter. However, the terror inside the post office was far from over. Many victims, including Mike Bigler and Jean Bray, were rushed to the hospital, some in critical condition. Miraculously, some survived, but others would never recover from the physical and emotional wounds of the attack. In the aftermath, the Edmond Post Office became a site of sorrow and confusion. Survivors were forced to gather at the city council's chambers, where they were told to wait while the names of the deceased were being read aloud. And cries of family members echoed through the building as they learned of the devastating losses. The attack, lasting just 15 minutes, left the community shattered. 14 employees lost their life that day. Many others were left to grapple with the trauma of surviving such a horrific event. Sherrill's true motives remain unclear, though many believe his primary targets were his supervisors who had repeatedly reprimanded him. His attack ultimately led to his own demise, but the wounds he inflicted on the survivors and the families of the victims would last much longer. In the years that followed, many of the employees who survived the attack either transferred to other post offices or left the postal service altogether. Tracy Sanchez, who had hidden in a storage closet during the attack, eventually quit her job after being diagnosed with PTSD. The Edmond Post Office will never be the same. I like to say the names of the victims and people who passed away in memoriam to them. May they rest in peace. 14 people were killed in the shooting, while 6 others were injured. Those killed were Patricia Ann Chambers, 41, Judy Stephens Denny, 41, Richard C. Esser Jr., 38, Patricia A. Gabbard, 47, Jonna Ruff Gregor, 30, Patty Jean Husband, 48, Betty Ann Jared, 34, William F. Miller, 30, Kenneth W. Morey, 49, Leroy Orrin Phillips, 42, Jerry Ralph Pyle, 51, Paul Michael Rockney, 33, Thomas Wade Shader Jr., 31, and Patty Lou Welch, 27. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please feel free to like and subscribe, share it with others. It will help a lot. I honestly been meaning to post more, but I haven't been able due to a lack of motivation on a bout of seasonal depression. Well, I'm doing better now, but I lose motivation sometimes, but that's a given with this sort of stuff. But I do plan to continue the Going Postal series, as this is a really niche topic that I find interesting. Not many people cover this, and, well, I've been meaning to cover this more. So, see you next time. And take care of your mental health. It's really important. So long.